welcome you to this afternoon's presentation, Land of 700 Plus Cultures, the Art of Papua New Guinea, which is event code 7555, for those of you guys keeping score, or doing whatever it is you're doing with that, for running your attendance. Across the street, or across the alleyway, our exhibit, Oceanic Journey, the Art of Papua New Guinea, featured artifacts on loan from the Spurlock Museum at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. And we'll be having a public reception for that exhibition immediately upon the end of this presentation. So come on over and get some light refreshments and see some of the artifacts that are from the land that we'll be talking about this afternoon. That exhibition and this presentation are being sponsored by our presenting partners, UMB Bank and the estate of Mildred Marshall, with additional support from Charles and Karen Kemp, as well as the MSSU Institute of International Studies, which we're really thrilled to have all of those helps. In putting together the exhibit, we understood that the work would be a bit unfamiliar to most of us, including myself, as I mislabeled it 3 or 4 times when I was first trying to organize things. So we wanted to bring someone in who could help us contextualize and understand what we were going to be viewing. I was thrilled, really quite amazed to find someone here in Missouri that was not only a renowned expert, but who had years of personal experience with the work of Papua New Guinea. So I'm really thrilled to introduce Dr. Jacqueline Lewis-Harris, who's the former director of the Connecting Human Origin and Cultural Diversity Program, and was associate professor in both anthropology and at the College of Education at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, which is quite a bit for one person to be doing.
That's my second grade.
She holds a doctorate and master's in anthropology from Washington University, St. Louis, and published numerous articles, chapters, and catalogs on African American, Papua New Guinea, and West African artists, as well as Pacific art and cultures in relation to identity, art, and contemporary society. She lived and worked in Liberia, West Africa for over 2 years, has traveled throughout the West and North Africa, and has traveled extensively in the Pacific with an emphasis on visiting Papua New Guinea. In her former position in the other career, where she was assistant curator at the St. Louis Art Museum, she curated several important exhibits, including the Art of Papua New Guinea, African Explorers, 20th Century African Art, Jacob Lawrence, the Migration Series, Visions of the People, Faith Ringo, Masterpieces of Central Africa, and she reinstalled the museum's African and Pacific galleries. If you've not been to their museum, they do have some really nice collections. She currently consults for collectors, galleries, and museums as an independent curator. So please welcome today's distinguished presenter, Dr. Jacqueline Lewis-Harris.
So if they would, as they say in Papua New Guinea, they would say "Happy Noon." So happy noon to you all. Yes, I was really excited about this email that I received about this collection because of the fact that I'm still in contact via Facebook with my adopted family who's from Papua New Guinea, who now lives between Australia and Papua New Guinea. But also the fact that this university had a trip to Australia, and I thought, wow, that's really great because here we are at UMSA, we go to Europe, right, in West Africa, and nobody's brave enough to pull it together to go to the Pacific. And I thought, this is really exciting. I went back and read over all your programs. I thought, oh man, I wish I'd gone to school here. It sounded like a really wonderful program. And when they told me that they had an exhibit here, rather than just speaking about Papua New Guinea, what I asked them to do is send me photographs of the pieces that are going to be in an exhibit, so it makes sense. Because some of the work is so abstract, when you look at it, if it didn't have a facial features, you wouldn't know what it was about. And I thought it'd be fun to talk about the context, talk about the country. My husband and I lived there for 6 years. I went there first went in as a volunteer for UN. That's something you all can think about when you graduate. There's Peace Corps. I did that in West Africa, but the UN Volunteers pays more, and you get your own car. So you won't have to go out there hitchhike to get to work. So you might want to think about that when you graduate, it's to go into the UN volunteer program. And after I finished up with UN volunteers in Papua New Guinea, then they gave, between my husband and I, we had contracts for 4 more years to work with the government in Papua New Guinea, and both our kids were born here too. So that's a little bit of background. And then when I came back to work at the St. Louis Art Museum, the director said, why don't you use your experience and get your master's? I said, because I'm not thinking about it. But it turned out that they had Martin D. May, who basically owned Famous and Bar stores, had left a huge endowment at the university for the support of the African, Oceanic, and the pre-Columbian collection. And so that helped pay for me to go and get my master's. So, I said, why not? Doing your master's, except for it was hard with 2 kids, I must admit. My husband helped a lot, but it was still hard. And so that's how I ended up going to WashU, working on my master's, using my experience from Papua New Guinea for my master's and my doctorate, because I had taken all those credits. And my advisor called me and said, you can just roll into a doctorate now. I said, really? Do I have that many credit hours? He goes, yeah. I said, oh, okay. So, yeah, it was a blur. Except for writing that dissertation, that took a long time, because you get so much information, you come up with all these different concepts, and then you have to put it together into a paper, and that was the hard part. So that's part of the reason my dissertation is on my adopted family, who lives between Papua New Guinea and Australia, because they said, if you're going to write on something, you need to write on us, because nobody's written about us since 1952. I said, okay, so that's what we did. All right, so let's get started. Where are we? This is the Western Pacific. I like to use this because it gives you a broader world view. So here's Australia, for those folks who went to Australia. Up here is Hawaii, and then there's Papua New Guinea, second largest, the island New Guinea, second largest island in the world. And the area we're going to be talking about is Papua New Guinea, which is the green part, with 100 some islands around here. So this, a few facts. I always have to start off with this, because the Papuan people, and the guy in the purple shirt is a Papuan person, arrived to that island over 40,000 years ago. I had a student shout at me one time in class, 40,000 years, people weren't around 40,000 years. I was like, calm down. And I showed them the archaeological evidence and the physical anthropology evidence, and really I said pushes it back to 50, and in parts of Australia 90. So we had to work that out. But these guys actually migrated in 40,000 years ago. And that's just, if you're an anthropologist, this is a phenotype. This is what average Papuan would look like. The Austronesians, who are more related to the Polynesians, came in 4,000 years ago. This is a friend of mine who passed away named Wendy Cho, one of the first contemporary women artists, and also who I wrote about in my dissertation. And I always called her a double Austronesian, because her mother was Austronesian, being Papua New Guinea Polynesian, and her father was Malay Chinese, who are also Austronesian. So she got Austronesia from both sides. In the country itself, there's 851 languages. 12% of the world's languages are on that island, on those islands. And it's thought to be 720 cultural groups. The reason why I say thought to be is because it seems like every year they find another cultural group. They found a group of people, I say found, when a helicopter flyover as late as 1987, the Hagahai. who had natural immunity to hepatitis C. And they have since cloned and copyrighted their DNA. 18% of the population lives in the urban environment, and Papua New Guinea only became a country in 1975. So, thought I'd just show you. I used to like to sit at the bus stop and just look at the different types of people. There was one group, a Papuan group from the north side of the island who had carrot red hair, my skin complexion. And you would always know that they were from that part of Morabie because of the carrot red hair. All right, but then you have, again, folks who are Polynesian or Austronesian background. She's also Austronesian. But then you had folks like these folks here who are of the Papuan background. They're from the highlands. Each one of these, by the way, each one of these plumes is a bird. It's a bird of paradise. And the same with those parrots. So how do Papua New Guineans look at art? And it's always good to think about this when you go back and look at things in the gallery, because we look at art as like, oh, that's a really nice banner, I like the design, and it's a decoration, sometimes it has function. For Papua New Guineans as a whole, if the art doesn't have a spiritual function, it's not art. All right, so in the case of this duk-duk dancer, all right, that piece, even before it was performed, and this was performed at a festival, had to be blessed and sanctified by the priest or the headman in their area. So again, they call that something true. Something true is pigeon. All right, now you have a wonderful painting. This is at the Seattle Art Museum. Yeah. And this was painted back in the 70s. It's a warrior holding somebody by their feet. And it's a wonderful piece. It's early contemporary art. But if you talk to people in the village, it's something nothing, because it doesn't have that spiritual connection. It's something that makes money, it's something that's different, it's something contemporary, but it's something nothing. It's not something something, or something true. All right, the same thing but here. Now, people, if you go online, they'll say, oh, Cambot storyboard, that's really authentic. Not. It was invented by by Australian, what they call Kiap, which is like a sheriff, because he was trying to help people in this village come up with an idea of something they could sell to tourists. This is actually part of a tree, buttress root that comes out the bottom of the tree, and they carved scenes in it, put lime on it, sold it to tourists. So it's not something true. It's not authentic. It's a tourist piece. But then what happens when you use temper paint and you have all the traditional headdresses and beadwork and everything else, does the temper paint make it not something true? That's, again, that's some of the things that people talk about. But it's still authentic. It's just that they're using temper paint rather than the original pigments that you find in nature. So this one has no spiritual connotation at all, even though they're beautiful. So where I went through the collection, most of the pieces that you have in the gallery are from this area up here. It's called the Sepik River. And we've traveled from up here all the way down out to Angorum. Huge swamp, big crocodiles. I used to hear this meek, meek at night, meek, meek. And I was like, what is that? Is that some kind of bird? And they go, no, those are the crocodiles talking to each other. I was like, oh, okay, I'm staying inside. Because they all had outhouses, so you had to go to outhouse. Sometimes you had to canoe to the loo. So, you know, you might have to canoe out to the loo, and there's a crocodile out there. And you're thinking, I don't want to fall. But this is the Sepik area. And then you have the mountain range that runs right through here, the Bismarck Range. And you have a few pieces in the collection, drums, that we'll talk about, that we'll see today. And then there's some areas, Mundane area pieces. And there's a few pieces I'll show you from Port Moresby, like the Bilums, the string bags. So I just wanted to show you in terms of the overall map of the country, some of the pieces that are in the collection. So the thing about this place that always fascinated me, we were able to travel to 17 out of 20 provinces as part of my job. My job was to go out and collect artifacts to sell. Is that you could go someplace which was just incredibly beautiful, which is basically jungle or cleared jungle with light shining through the trees like this, to be woken up in the morning by the rumble of a volcano. And that's sort of scary. Even though the volcano's not really close by. I remember looking out the window and seeing the water at the swimming pool at the hotel going like this. And it's because this same volcano, which was about 20 miles offshore, had blown up. And then you have really high mountainous areas like the Bismarck. You can swear when you're standing out there looking at the horizon that the horizon actually goes like this. It doesn't, but that's what it looks like to you. And then you have the plains right down by the ocean. So the thing is about all the work that we'll see is it's about people's connections with the environment, all right? So what happens, you have contemporary art, and this is why I wanted to also show you photographs of contemporary areas. This is Port Moresby, the capital city. It's not all like, bush huts and all this. They actually have a new highway that goes from the airport out to the government center. And this is the Parliament building, which is supposed to capture all the different cultures of Papua New Guinea in one building. So you have this, and then you have your bush. You have people that still live in the villages. This, you can see, this is Hana Abada, another friend of ours. Our family lives in there. And they are on mangrove tree poles, because it doesn't rot in the water. And they had their houses built out, and they built their houses out there way before all of this was built. Way back. These were the people that migrated in 4,000 years ago. So you have this combination in the city, but then you go up in the highlands, and you have houses which are actually woven, and this is a close-up of a wall. This is bark. These are woven walls, and this is bark, and it's held together with cane, and then it's tied in, literally tied into the bark. So you have walls, and they're thick. The walls are about this thick because it gets cold up there. It helps keep the warmth in. But basically, I used to laugh and say, basically, these are big baskets. The whole house is woven, And then you have the grasses, the kunai grasses are woven into a framework, so the whole house. But then you also have ones that are more Western, and these are woven walls. It's actually split bamboo, woven like a mat, and then put together over a framework, and with a woven roof. The nice thing, and put on stilts, the nice things about being in houses like this, there's no nails. They're all tied together. My daughter and I were in a house like that. There was a 6.0 earthquake, and it woke us up, but the whole house just swayed. The roof didn't cave in, the walls didn't cave in, because everything was tied together, it just swayed. So better than being in concrete block. So, going on to the art. Almost all the art that you will see came from or was connected to what we call the men's houses. And there are hundreds of different types of men's houses. I just showed a few for this talk. And if you notice the roof line on this one and the roof line on this, so what they did when the architects were designing the Parliament House, they tried to emulate some of the structures from the men's houses. The men's houses are sort of like the city hall, the mayor's government, the city government, all rolled into one. Women rarely get to go into those. And that's where all the different important things are decided. This is the interior of a men's house. It's a little crowded. This is the detail of it, where all the artwork is. There's a drum there, which is used for communication. Sacred pieces are hung from the ceiling. If you go up that ladder, there's more pieces upstairs on the second level up here. And the funny thing about this is that if you really look at it, there's a face up here, there's some body parts here, and there's this skirt. This represents an ancestral mother. That's why women can't go inside, because the men are initiated inside of the ancestral mother. This is on the sepik, and this is why it has a skirt. That's her face right at the top. So the whole thing is symbolic. Here, this is in the Gulf. They don't make these anymore because it's so much work, and also people are scattered, but whole families, the whole village lived inside of these, but the men lived in the front and the women and children lived in the back. And they said this is the body of a crocodile and this is the mouth of the crocodile when it's open. So this is all the symbolism that you find. And in the front, they would have pieces called gopi boards or spirit boards, and the boards would swing and tell them which direction to go find a good-sized crocodile. Once the crocodile was harvested, they would put skulls there, like trophy skulls at the bottom, the pieces, and that would be in the very front. So again, they're like museums. So, what do we have in the exhibit today? We have several panels. Those panels were actually painted panels that would be in the top of the men's house. This is the roof of another men's house. Now this one is up on the sepik, way up at the top of the sepik. And this is a close-up of how they would attach them. Here's the rooftop, here's the beam. The beams were painted, and then these panels were attached. They are actually made out of palm sphath. You know where the palm connects, if you think of a palm leaf, and how it connects to the body of the trunk of the palm? That's the part. That's the part that connects directly to the palm. So this would be on the base of the trunk of the palm. The palm leaf would have gone right on off the top. They cut those, flatten them. Of course, they have big palms. They flatten them out, and then they paint designs. And all these designs tell a story. They either tell a story about, in this case, frog eggs. Another one might be about a spirit being that protects people. But all of them. And the one that you have in your exhibit was painted like this and actually has a story. The other thing to think about is in the process of connecting and protecting yourself from your environment, because like I said, you have huge crocodiles, you have other types of snakes, not a lot of poisonous snakes, but snakes big enough to crush you and take care of you. You have other types of things in the environment where you can die, like in the swamp. I dropped off in a hole or two, and people picked me up and got me out. But the thing is that you have to be in balance with your environment, or you don't live. You know, we don't think about it too much because we have air conditioning and we have buildings, but then you all had that tornado. They would have had a whole celebration around the fact that people survived the tornado and would have called in the wind spirits and talked to the wind spirits about that. So in this case, what we have here, go back one. What we have here is a connection with, get there, with the spirits through dancing. And you have the one in the middle. Can you think about what bird that might be connected to? It's an exotic bird. People keep them in cages. They're fairly good size. Yeah, it's like a macaw. It's a big parrot. Yeah, exactly. It's a huge parrot. And so in this particular one is connected to parrots. This one up here connected to the sea eagle. That's the nose there. This one is abstract bush spirit. I can't tell you. There's no animal equivalent. It's the spirit of the bush. So when you have these dances, you have these ceremonies, you have music that goes along with it. So in this case, and in the collection, you have drums. The drums that are in the exhibit are from the Highlands. I wanted to show the detail on this one because it's a sea eagle right here. And this is the track of the crocodile here. And then this is designs from the crocodile here. So you could say in this area, because the crocodile was the father and the sea eagle was the son, that they had all the designs carved into the drum. And this one, I think these are frog eggs on this one. All right, this one is the sea eagle, and they're standing on the tops of flutes. And when these flutes play, it's really eerie. It's a really sort of low moaning sound, but they talk, because as they play them, they sort of talk into them. And they're also always played in pairs, and they say those are the brothers talking about the father. So you always have this music. It could be drums, it could be flutes, other types of instruments that bring the spirits into the costumes. It's a whole package. Now, we're going to jump up to the top of Papua New Guinea, and this is the Sepik area. This is the river going on out to, if you kept on going this way, you'd be at the Bismarck Sea out here. And the reason why I have a lot of this is because a lot of the work in this exhibit is from this area. And what we find in this area that you don't find anywhere else in Papua New Guinea is you find scarification, where these are little tiny cuts. And they say those are the marks of the crocodile father, because their story is there was a crocodile father who could change into a human during the day, who married a woman, and all the children that they had were children that could change from humans to all the good animals that you find all up and down this area. So you had that combination with the environment, with humans and survival. And as part of the initiation, and this is still going on today, they would have these scarification marks put on their body. And I remember a guy saying he was going to run for parliamentary seat, and they go, "You're not initiated, you can't represent us." And he was in his 30s, and he had to go through initiation to run for parliament, because he really wanted to do that, to get that seat badly. And so again, you have the art designs, they're reflected in the stories, and they're reflected in the art. So what animal do you think might have connected these masks? What animal? Again. No, not like this one. This one has wings. It's like a parrot, again. And these are beaks. But as you go farther down the river, you'll find out that they also have humongous catfish. I mean, catfish with heads this wide. And you know, catfish have those barbs off of them. And if they hit you, they can cut your skin badly. Those are also associated with the barbs of the catfish. All right, but also look at this one. This has got a tail on it. We were just talking about the crocodile. So this one is a representation of a person who was part crocodile and part human. All right, this one you have a representation going back to the sea eagle. So when you go and you look at some of the pieces that are in the display. Look and see what animals you might, or animal motifs you might see in the pieces. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and you have a couple of these actually in your exhibit, is there are woven helmets. They're called babatagua. And they basically fit over the whole head. That was the one I first showed you with all the fruit around the neck. And these are masks for yams. Now, who would think about digging up a yam? Now, we're not talking about yams like we have here, little ones. Their yams are this long. The women's yams are short and fat. The men's yams can be 5 or 6 feet long. When you dig them out, it takes 2 or 3 people to dig them out so you don't break it. And the longer the yams, and I'll show you a photograph in a minute, actually are talked about as being representatives of ancestors who have come back. So if you're going to have an ancestor who came back and he is going to live temporarily in this yam, you have to give it a face. All right? And one of the other things that they did, and I wanted to put this in here because we have, that relates to Baba Tagwa, is that during initiation, you would also wear some of this, and you can see the same fan shape in the background here. All right, those represent the birds that they think of as their ancestors. Like the last group, we looked at, they thought of the crocodile as being the ancestral father. In this group, the Abalam, they look at the cassowary mother. So they live off the river, up in the hills, for the cassowaries. Now, cassowaries, for you who are not familiar, they're sort of like emus, are very ugly ostriches with really, really big claws. And the way that they can be dangerous to humans is if you're getting near their nest, they come at you feet forward and literally will knock you over with these claws. People have been, in fact, the guy in Florida was just killed a couple months ago by his pet cassowary. Come think about it. Yeah, and they come fly, they literally fly, a bird this tall, flying at you feet forward. So in this area, they have the men's house. This is where they have the ceremony. And then here are the yams. Now these are shorter yams, they're longer ones. And these are the yams that were presented for the yam festival. And each one is imbued with the ancestral spirit of one of the men who died. And each one has a mask on. So the little masks that you see, like this one in the exhibit, actually were made to be on yams. And now that we're going into the 21st century, and these ancestors are hip, so they come back with old cell phones and water containers, and there was even one with a pith helmet. So all the things that a 21st century ancestor might have, they might actually decorate the yam with this. So I was telling you that the whole environment with the environmental animals and safety and taking care of your environment was so important. And again, in this area, the mother was considered to be a cassowary. Now, how did a cassowary marry a normal human man? It's because whenever she would go to the river, to the pond, she and her sisters would take their cassowary suit off, and when they would take off their cassowary suit, they became beautiful women. This is the story. Okay, this is the story. That's what I'm telling you. And what he decided, because he was sitting up in a tree spying on them, and he decided that he wanted to make one of those women his wife. So what he did is while they were out swimming, he took her cassowary skin and stole it and put it in a container. So when she came out, she couldn't find her skin, so she had to remain human. And then he came down out of the tree, and supposedly she decided, well, since I can't go back to being cassowary, I'll go hang out with this guy for a while. And this is how these clans began. They began with the cassowary mother and the human father. So each clan in this area has a different bird totem because the mother was a cassowary. So it's a parrot, there's a cockatoo, there's eagles. And all these designs that you see here and the designs in the masks themselves always reflect the birds or characters of the birds. And you might wonder, well, how did she get back? Well, one of the kids found her skin that the father had hidden in a piece of bamboo in the top of the house. And he brought it down to his mother and he goes, what's this skin doing out there? And of which, of course, she snatched it, put it on, became a cassowary and ran away. That's how the story ended. I knew you wanted to know that. So other things, you have masks in this exhibit. They have these strange hook-like figures around the face. All right, and you also have a bowl like this in the exhibit. It's from the area called Ramu. Now here's the sea up here, and if you were to go down the Ramu and down here, then you go back to the Sepik, where the people believe that the crocodile is the father. In this area, at night, you know, like birds come in at night and roost in the trees. In this area, in the evening, there are so many cockatoos that come in. The air is it's like big black clouds. All right, because you know, cockatoos are good-sized birds. And you would have black cockatoos coming in and white cockatoos with pink and white cockatoos with yellow. And they all had the different trees that they would roost in. You can imagine the sound. And so consequently, what do you think what bird would be important in their area would be a cockatoo, all right? And it's just amazing. I didn't have a camera, but it's just amazing to see these big clouds of birds coming in, and you're thinking, oh, they're not coming for us. But they come and they roost in these trees. So the other thing that they have there is that, so you have the cockatoo, you have the big head catfish, and then you have smaller crocodiles. So those are the main animals. So consequently, these masks are used for initiations of young men. This mask would actually, and you have one in the exhibit, a smaller, narrow one, was actually attached to a flute. Like I said, when they play the flute, it sounds like somebody talking, but you can't quite make it out. All right, so you have flute masks, you have initiation figures, and then you also had initiation masks. And the hooks on these masks are connected with either the cockatoo beak, depending on the clan, or the barbs on the catfish, depending on the clan. And what they've done is basically stylize those to give you a warning face, because the face on this one is right there in the middle. So it's either covered by barbs or covered by beaks. So again, part of the initiation. Also in the exhibit, you have bowls. And I just wanted to basically show you a collection of bowls from Papua New Guinea. They're beautiful bowls. They're bowls I gave away, which I now resent that I gave away, because they were just really wonderfully carved, like the one at the top, which actually has stingrays at the end of it. The overall motif is a fish, ancestral guardian there. You have clay bowls. You have huge feast bowls. This one would have been about this big. And then you have individual family serving bowls, which are sort of fun, with little people at the end as handles. So you have several bowls in this exhibit. And I just wanted to let you know, this is you would have a family bowl, a family feast bowl, and then you sometimes have individual bowls for mixing paints and pigments, And then also, as you get older and you can't eat because as well because you don't have as many teeth, you might have an individual bowl where you actually mix up your food in those small bowls, and those are the personal bowls. The other thing that you have in the exhibit are Bilums. And Bilums, if you were to look closely, you see she has a needle in her hand, and it's a type of a figure-8 loop. And you basically build upon layers of figure-8 loops, and you get these huge bags like this. And the Bilums were used to hold the babies. I put both of them. This is an archival photograph from the turn of the century, and this is my niece Zara's baby in her Bilum, and this was taken last month. So the Bilums are still used. They're still sold, and my kids stayed in them for a little while, but they were sort of hyperactive. So I had to watch because, especially my son, he's like, I'm out of here. You know? So you had to put them in when they're really young so they get used to it, but it works really great as a cradle. You hang it from a hook and swing it back and forth. Other thing is these are actually Bilums too. These are huge Bilums. These are women from the Highlands, the Southern Highlands. And so not only are they used just to carry things in, but also they're sort of used as headdresses too. They're really beautiful. And it's a lot of work. It took me 2 weeks to make a little tiny Bilum. Now, what do you do when you have these type of Bilums is you're going into a contemporary time. And so these two ladies, Kathy and Florence, took the Bilum shape and literally changed it to make two-piece dresses and one-piece dress. Florence just had her work shown in Bloomingdale's in Hawaii. That was one of the feature part of the Pacific Arts Week, and she had 5 dresses shown in Bloomingdale's. And I think they all sold too. And just this month, they're having a Bilum Festival, which Florence helped to get organized, because this is one of the things that men don't do. And so consequently, women can make money off of this without the influence of men. Here's Miss Papua New Guinea with a Bilum dress on. You can go, you have a Bilum in the display, which is similar to this with the Papua New Guinea flag. So you go into markets, and then these natural fiber Bilums. The fibers come from the inner bark of the tulip tree, the inner bark of the the paper mulberry tree, a lot of work. So consequently, what a lot of contemporary people do is they use acrylic yarn. But you can't use the yarn just like you get it from the store. You have to unravel the yarn, and then you have to basically strengthen the yarn by rolling it on your arm or your leg to make a stronger fiber. So even though they're made out of acrylic, they're not made out of acrylic like you just go to the store and get. They actually respin it. They respin it. And then the other thing that you have in this collection are skirts. And again, here's the turn of the century. This is about 1870s, I think it is. You can see the baby here in the Bilum. And that was the basic fare for everybody. Men had longer skirts in the front, sort of like this. This is a combination of tapa cloth, which is the inner bark of the paper mulberry tree, with a bandana skirt over it with a big belt. This is sago palm, a fiber that's been stripped down, actually soaked in seawater, washed again, dried out, and stripped out to make it soft. And the ones on the costumes on the far right are probably the same thing. I love these costumes. This is from the turn of the century from the Gulf area. And these are men, actually men in there, and they see through this part. But you see the skirts actually set up around their chest and come down. And then The other things, what are the skirts used for now? This photograph I just took in April, there are kids that came to visit us as a part of the cruise, so went out on the cruise line to talk about art. And again, they're still using the traditional sago leaf skirts here. And these skirts are a combination of plastic and rayon and sago leaf. These are sago leaf here. And the thing is about the skirts is that you have to have them plush, because the whole thing about skirts, especially the longer skirts, is the swing. And at first I was like, why do you all have, these things are so heavy, why do you have to have, they go, because it's the swing. And this is one of the older dancers. She must have been going her late 60s, and she was trying to outswing the younger dancers. And so she had like 2 or 3 skirts on, but she really showed up all, she said, now this is how you do it. And so the whole thing about the skirts, and I wanted to show them in action because you have it in an exhibit, but you don't have them in layers, so you can't really, they're sort of dead in exhibits. But what the point is the action of the hips and the waist to get these skirts to swing. And when the girls are brought out from initiation, these are the Austronesian folks along the southern coast of Australia, Papua New Guinea, northern coast of Australia. They come out and they swing. They have competitions to see how high their skirts can swing. And so some actually look like ballerinas. I mean, the skirts come out vertically, perpendicularly from the hips. But that's the whole point of the skirt, is the swing. And what Wendy Cho did, being the first contemporary woman artist to graduate from the art school in Papua New Guinea, is that she had to get sanction from her elders to change these traditional skirts to a contemporary art form. And this is what she's done in this. And she had I can't show you the real one because she put it on display, and the very night of the opening, somebody stole the skirt. And she thinks it's one of her aunties, her great aunties. So again, they're taking these contemporary art, these traditional art forms, and making it into contemporary art forms. And then lastly, you have some contemporary art, which is in the exhibit. And I just wanted to show you that on the far left, you have a piece that was actually made in 1987. This piece is by Kawagi now, about selling $2,000 to $5,000. The ones over the right-hand side, I actually just photographed in April. These are graduates from the art school who are making these huge individual portrait paintings for tourists. So the piece that you have in the exhibit is very much like the piece on the right. And so this is where they're going now. They're going back to looking at traditional face painting, traditional costuming, but they're painting them up in contemporary canvases. So with that, I'll be able to answer any questions at the reception if you want, but I thought I'd end with that because that's what we have in your collection. Thank you very much.